What's up, degenerates? This is Locked In. I'm your host, Mason Cameron at PFF_Mace on Twitter. And with me, as always, my partner in crime, Vishaal Gupta at Vishaal_Gupta 95 on Twitter. V, I did it right off the top of the dome.
Nice.
We were just talking about this first time doing the intro without having it written down. I'm proud of myself. And we're back at it again this week, V. Week 4 of NFL action. I'm excited to break it down. How are you doing this week?
I am doing great. We have a pretty solid slate of games this week, so looking forward to it. And yeah, let's dive in.
Yeah, and the good thing about this week too, it's sometimes it's nice when we get one of these weeks where we really lean in the same direction on a lot of games, because it kind of like is that nice validation that you're like, yeah, somebody smart also in this field
Right.
agrees with what I'm doing here too. But V, this is a special week because we have some special stuff going on. We're going to break into that here in a little bit, but for starters, everybody does know that we do have a special game on the slate this week, that we're going to have a special bet between myself and V. We'll break that down here in a little bit. And also, just as another little teaser, we have our first head-to-head. No, I mean, not fabricated head-to-head. We'll get into it a little bit more later, but we have our first official head-to-head of the season on one of the games. I can't wait to break it down. And, we're going to be keeping track of those through the season. We're going to declare another winner just like we did last year. For anybody who wasn't around last year, V is the NFL versus champion after a tough end for me to last season, but that's okay because we keep it moving and we're going to start off good again this week. So, actually, I have to grab one more thing here real quick. Before we break into the picks for this week, we got to break down what happened on Thursday night. That one was a doozy, V. What did you make of what happened out there? When Detroit goes into Green Bay, especially kind of how well Green Bay's played up to this point, I don't think even though I expected them to win, I did not expect them to kind of dominate the first half like they did. Detroit 34 as a 2-point favorite on the road. They cover. The game goes over the game total of 45. Green Bay had a lot of key injuries, which is really tough. A bunch of the offensive line was battered. It's a short week. That never works out well. This game was over by halftime, and everybody saw that one graphic. Even if you didn't watch the game, everybody saw that one graphic that was floating around of Detroit having 199 yards of total offense and the Packers having a single yard of total offense. I know this was a game we talked about a little bit in the Discord with some of the subscribers in our Discord, V, but what did you see with this matchup here?
Yeah, I just saw a Detroit team that's probably a little bit more complete at this point in their new regime and their kind of rebuild that they started a couple of years ago. They spent a lot of time and resources over the last couple of years really building up that roster top to bottom, especially in the trenches. And, it's really clearly starting to pay off. I mean, that's where this game was truly won. I mean, the Detroit defensive line really dominated that game all day. And Jared Goff had the usual amount of time that he normally does to throw the ball wherever he wanted to. It wasn't like a great Jared Goff game either, and they still won rather comfortably last night. So it kind of really tells you what a good job they've done building up that roster. And, this is going to be a team that's going to be playing late into the year. They're going to be playing in January. It feels like there's kind of no doubt about it right now. The question is really, what is their upside? I mean, I think we all feel comfortable or confident that they can win a game in the playoffs, maybe two. But, if they're down 6 points in San Francisco, with like 3 minutes left, is Jared Goff the guy who's going to get it done? I mean, those are probably questions we don't need to be talking about right now, but I'm guessing those are going to be the kind of conversations we're having late into January. So it's going to be interesting to watch. For Green Bay, I mean, it kind of is what it is. This is a very young roster, and they were very banged up front, and you can only ask them to do so much. I mean, the question is going to be, as they get healthier, are we going to get more consistent play out of Jordan Love? And I think it's just a strange spot for them, because if Jordan Love was a rookie, I think you would feel so good about where everything is right now, but you do have time to develop him and allow him to get better. But since he is where he is right now in year 4, and you kind of have to make a decision relatively soon, even though they kind of gave him a interesting extension over the summer. It's not a long-term extension; it's just a 1-year extension. You kind of have to make up your mind sooner rather than later. So it's just an interesting spot. They have a smaller timeline than I think they would like. So it's just going to be fascinating to see how that plays out and what other options they might consider going into next year.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. You would, and all in all, Green Bay's not a horrible roster.
No,
Like
absolutely not.
they've played well. Their defense is really really solid. They ran up against a buzzsaw in the Lions that were playing really well. When the Lions are clicking on offense, they're a very good team. And just like we've kind of has been kind of the narrative around Goff this year, especially with like his interceptions early on in this season, whereas he'd gone however many games prior
Mhm.
without an interception and almost broke the record or whatever. And that, fell off a cliff almost precipitously with back to back to back interceptions in back to back to back games. So that is definitely going to be a question moving forward because they need him to be playing as good of football as he can.
Right.
And the plus side for them is that it's not like this is Goff's first rodeo. He's been deep into playoff games. Now he's not going to be the top of the NFC is just stacked. So that's going to be a tough road for literally anybody. But man, the Lions are going to make a lot of noise, and I can't wait to watch it happen because
Yep.
when they're clicking, they are an impressive unit. And one of the biggest reasons why is that this defense is so improved. This defense, when I was doing research earlier on in the week, they are, let's see, top 8 in total pressures this season. They have 61 pressures. That is a ton for a team that struggled to pressure the quarterback, struggled to cover receivers on the back end, and really ended up having to boat race every single team they played. Now, Green Bay's offense isn't super explosive this year, especially given some of the injuries they've been dealing with. Aaron Jones has a hamstring injury, which he had a really tough night the other night. They've missed all these guys on the offensive line. Christian Watkins, he had these injuries, and they might not have be super powerful, but to be held to 20, man, this Detroit defense can get even better, and I can't wait to watch it happen. So
Yep.
stay tuned for that for sure. So that's it for the betting recap for that one. And if you guys wanted to know our thoughts on that game before it happened, head into our Discord. That's where you talk to us. In order to get in there, you have to become a member with us, importantnonsense.com. Definitely go over there, subscribe, and that's how you can, ask us all of our questions because we had this one on lock. This was
Yeah.
exactly what we thought it was going to happen. This was not a surprise at all. And unfortunately, V, we get into the games for this week, and we have a tough one to start out with. So, for anybody that doesn't know, myself being from Denver, the Chicago Bears fan, we are in shambles this season. It's been a tough go for both franchises. No wins between them. Atrocious against the spread, and we for our first head-to-head of the season, we decided to do a little side bet amongst ourselves. There's no way that either of us were going to touch this game on a professional book, but we've decided to put dinner on, the next time we hang out on who's going to take this one home. So we see the Denver Broncos heading into Chicago. They are favored by 3 points. The game total on this one is 46. This is a safe place. Let it all out. What have you been seeing with your Chicago Bears or even these Denver Broncos this season?
Oh man, I don't even know where to start. I think we talked about it last week, and it's just going to continue to come up. I know a lot of the conversation in the national media has been about Chicago's offense, but I'm going to continue harping on what I talked about last weekend. It's really just this defense not performing anywhere near what we expected, and what we expected it was not like them to become a top 10 defense out of nowhere. I mean, it was understood that they were the worst unit in the league last year. So we just wanted to see some incremental growth coming into this year, maybe get close to average amongst defenses in the league. And they're just not doing anywhere close to that. They continue to be one of the worst, if not the worst, defensive units in the league. They don't do anything well at all on that side of the ball. They don't rush the passer. They don't stop the run very well. They don't play coverage. They don't take the ball away. They just don't do anything well. And now they're banged up. They're pretty much their entire secondary is going to be out for this game. Kyler Gordon was already on the IR. He's going to miss a couple more games. He's going to miss this week. Jalen Johnson has been ruled out for this game. Eddie Jackson has been ruled out for this game. There's just nothing this unit can do. I think one of the bigger disappointments in free agency this year has been Tremaine Edmonds. He really has done nothing. I mean, he has a ton of tackles, but who cares? I mean, he's not doing anything to impact the outcome of the game at all. He's letting guys just run completely free. Travis Kelce had his way with him last week, and that's a big time shame considering the amount of money that was paid to bring him in after he looked so good in Buffalo. It's disappointing, and I think it should be a big day, I think, for Russell Wilson and that offense, and that's why one prop bet I do like in this game is taking the over on passing yards for Russell Wilson at 232.5 passing yards. Russell Wilson has gone over 300 passing yards in each of his past two games. The Bears are allowing an average of 285 passing yards per game over the first 3 weeks. I don't see any way that they're going to be able to hold him down. He's looked, I mean, it hasn't been terrific in terms of win-loss record, but I think Russell Wilson has definitely looked better than how he looked last year. His receivers are staying on the field. And knock on wood, they've been healthy so far. Cortland Sutton has looked okay. Jerry Jeudy has been playing, and then let's get Marvin Mims more involved. Every time he touches the ball, it seems like an explosive play, and I would not be shocked at all if he has a couple deep touchdowns in this one because there's just nobody on the Chicago defense to hold him down.
Yeah, Marvin Mims, a top 15 graded rookie for the second week in a row. He's been playing really, really well. He's a big play waiting to happen. He's a really explosive player. And you're right. I'm right there with you with Russell. You know, Russell hasn't exactly been the problem with this team.
No,
Now,
not
it's
really.
not always, yeah, and it's not always pretty, but, and granted, so a lot of this is due to his volume. He's having to drop back a ton, but that's also due in part to this defense just not being as good as they have. And really, this dates all the way back to even though they were a good unit last year, and we talked about them being a good unit for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
but dating back to the Brad Chubb trade, it's really been a drop. It really has been. And even though Bradley Chubb might not have been the biggest like producer on the stat sheet, and he might not be racking up pressures or grading super super high even now after going to the Dolphins, but that trade specifically put the defense in a short-handed spot, and they've struggled. Randy Gregory struggled to rush the passer. They have just not been doing the things that they've come to know. So this is going to be an interesting draw. I'm super hesitant about having 3 on the road that we have to lay. And at the end of the day, I think that another decent value for this game might be over 46 because
Yeah.
just like you said, the defense in Chicago has been beyond questionable. And as much as we talk about the quarterback school videos that we love and all of that, at a certain point, they're just letting other teams run, walk, everything all over them.
Oh,
The Chiefs last week got anything they wanted, didn't even break a sweat. It was absolutely ridiculous. But that's where I think this value in turn lies in this game is on that over. So I'm agreeing. And all right, V, this is it. Comes down
look,
to
I would not. This would be the happiest I've ever been to owe someone dinner. I mean, honestly, it feels
the
like the way these teams are playing, it should be reversed. Whoever loses should receive the dinner because that's what we want. But yeah, this is
yeah.
really the Caleb Williams Bowl. That's what we're both rooting for. To be honest, going forward, it's not going to be pretty, but it is what it is.
We've already got those custom you know what? Maybe we'll eventually maybe throw in a little spicer on this one. It'll be the Caleb Williams jersey for the loser. Dinner for the winner, Caleb Williams jersey for the loser. So then it really is like
Yeah, there you go.
it is the catch 22.
Yep.
All right, so that does it for the Denver Chicago game. Now we're breaking into our actual slate of games, all of the picks that we have going on. And the first one we're starting with is Pittsburgh at Houston. This is another game. Like I said, we fell on the same side of a lot of these games, and it makes sense. We kind of, we spend a lot of time with each other. We've been doing this together for a long time, so we kind of have that connection and kind of think the same way. So On some weeks, it lines up a lot more than others. And this one specifically, it did. We both have Pittsburgh -3 on the road at Houston. The game total for this one is 42, 41.5, 42.5, depending on where you're shopping. What are you seeing with this Pittsburgh team is an interesting draw because they've come out, they've played well at times, and then they've struggled at times, specifically on the offensive line and in the run
Yep.
game, where you'd think that they would excel or where they would hope to excel, especially with Najee Harris back there. But you have Houston. CJ Stroud has been playing fairly well. He's been distributing the ball well. He's been getting quick reads, not taking a ton of pressure, getting the ball out of his hand. He has been playing well for a guy that people were semi worried about coming out. And he's, I think, probably without argument, the best young rookie quarterback that's come out of this class so far. And then they came out and absolutely had a great week last week, won the game. The Steelers end up winning. And now Houston getting points at home, and we're actually both going against them. So what are you seeing with this team specifically, why we're targeting against them?
Yeah, this comes down to one thing really, and it's just Pittsburgh's D line against Houston's absolutely ravaged and injured offensive line. It looks super bleak, their injury report this week again on the offensive line. Laramie Tunsil's out, Michael Dieter's out, Josh Jones is out, Titus Howard is still on the IR. Their rookie center, Juice Scruggs, has been ruled out for the season already. It's really just not great. They played Jacksonville last week, and the Jaguars' defense was not able to take advantage of a lot of these Houston injuries up front, which is maybe a conversation we should have sometime in the future about what's going on with Trayvon Walker and Josh Allen really not doing much for Jacksonville. But we'll skip that for a later time. But I think there's no doubt that Pittsburgh's defensive line will 100% be able to take advantage of all of these injuries. There's no stopping TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith and Nick Herbig and all these guys for Pittsburgh up front right now. They're on a mission right now. Even if Houston was healthy, they would have a tough time stopping those guys. They're definitely not healthy. They're completely banged up. So it's going to be a tough one for CJ Stroud. And I agree, he's been absolutely the best rookie quarterback so far this year. The all 22 of him has been awesome to watch. The way he's throwing the ball with so much anticipation and just so much poise and confidence. He looks so confident in the pocket, even when things are collapsing. He's going to have to do a lot of that this week. And I just don't think there's going to be as much time as he's going to need. I think the pocket's really going to collapse. And he doesn't have necessarily the best mobility quarterbacks out there. So I think it's just going to be a tough time. It's going to be tough for them to move the ball. That's really where this game comes down to, is that matchup. And then on the other side, I think Kenny Pickett looked a lot better last week against the Raiders defense. And I think it really was just those first 2 weeks. It was tough going up against San Francisco and Cleveland, two defenses who were probably ranked in the top 3 or top 5 right now in the league. But then you got a nice easy one against Las Vegas. He looked good. And now you're good to go up against a Houston defense that aren't world beaters by any stretch. So I think he should have another solid game. But really, this comes down to TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith versus Houston's offensive line.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. You put it perfectly. And another thing, in general, and the Steelers are just better in the trenches. Even their offensive line, as bad as they've been, they had a 51 run blocking grade through the season so far, which is very not good. To put that into perspective of how bad the Texans have been stopping the run, 32.3 run defense grade as a team, the
Wow.
worst in the NFL by a wide margin. So that is something that is alarming, and this will be an extremely telling test for Najee Harris and this front offensive offensive line for the Steelers. Because if they can't run the ball against the Texans, I don't think they can run the ball against anybody.
Yeah.
But if they can, I think this game gets pretty well in hand. And that's why 3 on the road doesn't really scare either of us, I think. And
For
it
sure.
makes a lot of sense why it wouldn't. So that's actually going to be an interesting game, though, because I love watching CJ Stroud play.
He's been awesome. Yeah.
He is so poised, and it's impressive how well he's played. And shout out to that Texans offensive coaching staff and just the coaching staff in general, who
Yeah.
gets this team to play really, really hard and who is putting Stroud in position to deliver the ball quickly and play within his game and not force him to become Josh Allen or force him to become Justin Fields, because he's not that player. That's
Yeah,
just
that San Francisco coaching tree on the defensive side of the ball has really been impressive the last couple of years. First with Robert Saleh, now with
yeah,
D'Amico Ryans. Those guys have done a tremendous job, I think, on both sides of the ball. I know Saleh's had some issues at quarterback, but in general, their teams play very hard despite not maybe having always the best talent on that side of the ball.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. The next game on our list here, we have Minnesota heading into Carolina to take on. Sounds like Bryce Young is going to be starting again for the
Mhm.
Panthers this week. I'm not quite sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. They looked a lot better with the Andy Dalton under center there, which is a weird thing to say. We live in
Yeah.
that universe where Andy Dalton's better than, their first overall pick at quarterback. But the Vikings head into Carolina. They are minus 4.5. You got it at 4 a little bit earlier in the week.
Yeah.
I got it. When we were checking just recently, I got it at 4.5. So you can probably still get it there. I would definitely check it out because you really never know how far this one might end up pushing by the end of it. Um, we're both on the side of Minnesota covering here. And I think at one point it just comes down to the Vikings are really good on offense. Jordan Addison has been great in his time taking over for Adam Thielen. It looks like this offense back a couple years ago when Adam Thielen was really, really good and clearing up space for Justin Jefferson. It's Justin Jefferson. I mean, my goodness. The guy is probably, I think it's safe to say, and not really a huge argument, that this guy is the best wide receiver in the NFL right now and
Mhm.
might be for a long time. He was actually one of my projected to break the, PFF single season receiving grade record. He's well on his way to doing that. He's fantastic and he looks absolutely uncoverable. I don't know if Carolina has the stuff on the back end to keep up with them because really Minnesota is the type of team that, as hilarious as it was to watch them match up with the Chargers and the Chargers end up charging and the Vikings end up Viking, and that's just what they do. And they did it against each other, trying to give each other the game. I don't see that being the case this week. The Vikings are pretty good about taking care of business against mismatched opponents like this one. And like we said, I'm not really sure what to make of Bryce being under center. He's got to show a lot more before I think we can trust him, even with points at home. So, what are you seeing with this one though? Are you as excited to watch Justin Jefferson every week as I am? It's honestly a popcorn moment for me.
Yeah, it's amazing, and he does so much with it seems like so little. Like you can get 4 catches and you can still have 150 yards. I mean, he can do whatever he wants on the football field. It's fantastic to watch, and yeah, I'm right there with you in terms of taking Minnesota in this one. It's interesting that seems like the line maybe moved away from Carolina once Bryce Young was announced returning to be the starter, which is maybe the opposite of what people thought heading to the season. I think most bookmakers would have told you Stroud was or Bryce Young was worth a couple points to the spread, but it seems like he's actually detracting from the spread. So that's going to be interesting to watch throughout the season. But yeah, Carolina has just not been good on offense when Young is under center. They've scored a total of 27 points in the first 2 games where he started. They're just not able to do much, and they definitely don't do anything very well on defense. That's going to be able to slow down this Minnesota offense. And Minnesota has scored 28 and 24 points in the last 2 weeks. And that's despite them being fairly one dimensional. Like they've really had to rely on their passing game. They're not getting anything at all out of Madison or their running game. But now they go up against a Carolina team that just got gashed by Kenneth Walker last week. So this might be the first time this season where Minnesota's going to be able to actually run the ball. So now you have to worry about that plus Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison. I mean, this one seems like you get pretty out of hand very early. So definitely got to take Minnesota at -4 or 4.5 wherever you're getting it.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think we talk about this all the time, but when you get this no man's land spot of like 4 or 5 points, it's a set. You're looking for like 7. Are they going
Yeah.
to cover 7? Do you think this team can cover 7? And I'd say yeah. And I mean, granted, it's not 7, so you have room to breathe, but 4.5, 5 games just don't end in that type of number. So I'm right there too. I think this one's not really going to be all that close. And it's just so surprising when you see a team get their first overall pick back and have that end up moving the line away from them. That's actually brings up a really good point too. Um, I have a prop bet for this game. I'm actually going to save that one for our Discord picks. So if anybody is not in the Discord, definitely go check it out. I've got that one slotted up for you and ready to go. It's a lock. You can't miss it. Well, I hate saying lock because that sounds so like corny, even though the show's called Locked In. But like it's got a tremendous value.
Yeah.
Mwah, there we go. We fixed that up. All right. So, into our next game on the slate, we have another game that we're both on here with Tampa Bay heading into New Orleans. New Orleans is minus 3.5 points. I'm not quite sure where the extra half comes, especially since we've been kind of high on Tampa this year. I'm
Yeah.
unsurprised that we fall on this same side again. You're actually taking the Bucks +3. I love it too. I actually took it also in my card. It will also be in our Discord. But for sake of a little bit of variety, and so we didn't overlap on every single game, I took a game a little bit later also so we could talk about more. But we're also both on the side of under about 39.5, 40. It's moved towards that 40 line. That's where it's at about right now. You can still get it at 39.5 in some places if you're interested in the over, but I don't know why you would be. 40 is a nice number for me personally.
Yeah.
I think that these defenses are really strong. What are you seeing with this matchup, especially that leans you towards Tampa in the points?
Yeah, so it's looking like Jameis is going to be starting in this one for New Orleans. Derek Carr had a shoulder injury last week. I think he's still listed as questionable, so it's not 100% that he's not going to play, but it's looking very likely that it's going to be Jameis Winston. And as much as we enjoy reminiscing about the glory days of Jameis Winston in Tampa Bay, he just really hasn't been that same guy in New Orleans. He hasn't been that gunslinger who can put up 400 yards, 3 touchdowns, but also throw 4 picks. He's not really that kind of guy anymore. He's become a little bit more conservative. So I just don't see them being that explosive when they go from Derek Carr to Jameis Winston. This has not been a good offense through 3 weeks, even with Derek Carr under center. They've scored 20 or fewer points in all 3 games so far this year. They just haven't done much of anything. They are getting Alvin Kamara back off of his 3 game suspension, so it'll be interesting to see how that works if he can provide that extra bit of juice that they're missing to pair with him with Chris Olave and Michael Thomas and Rashid Shaheed, and maybe we can get something going. But they are going up against the Tampa Bay defense that has been quite good over the first 3 weeks of the season. They gave up 17 points in week 1, 17 points in week 2, and then they gave up 25 in week 3 this past Monday against Philly, but that's probably a very good showing against a very good Philadelphia offense. They had a couple takeaways. They were able to put a little pressure on Jalen Hurts. So I think overall, this is still a very solid defense that's going to be able to get pressure on Jameis, and they're going to be able to take the ball away. They still have dudes on that side of the ball. This just feels like a very, very low scoring game. And then on the flip side, I think Baker has been better than we expected, but he's still going to be facing pressure in this game against a very good Saints front seven. We're going to have some more shenanigans with Mike Evans and Marshawn Lattimore. That's going to be fun to watch. Somebody will probably get ejected again, so we'll be enjoying that. But it just feels like both teams have very solid defenses, and both teams have maybe questionable offenses, so let's to say the least. Tampa Bay can't run the ball again for what seems like the 4th straight year. They just don't know what to do with that part of the game. So it's going to be one-dimensional for them again as well. So I just don't see very many points at all this one. And when you have a low-scoring game, you definitely want to take the points, especially when you're getting a full 3 out of it, because this could go either way. This really feels like a coin flip. This should probably be closer to a pick 'em, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's especially why the extra half point here is a little more of a
Yeah,
question. I'm not sure.
that's interesting. I didn't see that this morning, so it's interesting to see that move
Yeah, I think it's
later
moved
today.
that way, which is a little odd. I'm not sure if maybe one of the 3-letter networks started plugging a Jameis revenge narrative or something. I have no idea. Maybe that's what started
Maybe.
moving the line, but the extra half point here makes no sense to me. But that's where I lean to. Jameis is, or not Jameis, Baker has been actually very good. The change of scenery has been well for him. He's really playing well in Tampa. But honestly, we're all excited to watch this game because, You get Marshawn Lattimore taking on Mike Evans. Like,
You
and you know what? I was thinking about this in the shower the other day. If you follow me on this, okay? If I'm a elite cornerback in the league, what's your job? Say you're Revis Island, your job is to take the receiver out of the game, to lock him down. There's nothing better than making him throw a punch at you and get ejected and suspended for the next game. And
yeah,
I think that even if Marshawn Lattimore might not be the, perfect cover corner, he's grades really well and he is a fantastic guy. He gets beat on occasion sometimes. But if I'm taking out your number one guy and avoiding suspensions too at the same time, getting under your skin, you never know what's going to happen. So in my mind, mission accomplished. No. All jokes aside though, that matchup is not only good because those guys are they don't just dislike each other, they hate each other. They absolutely hate each other. And that might make that matchup interesting, but what really gives it the bones or the meat is that they're really good at what they do. They
yeah,
go to war when they hit the field, and that's going to be an interesting thing. And I said this in the PFF Week 4 preview that these teams might not be looked at with the same reverence of some of these other high profile rivalries, but when they see the field together, they go at it. They go to war. They're low scoring games, two good defenses. It only makes sense that even though 40 is kind of a low number, we're unafraid of going under that. I think you're looking at like a 17-10, 17-13, something like that type game. And
yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised to, again, we've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. I would not be surprised to see Tampa coming away as a road dog outright winner. So
for sure.
the next game on the list, it's the game of the week, Fee. Got to be the game of the week. The Miami Dolphins, the Showtime Miami Dolphins head into Buffalo to take on the Bills. This game is incredible. The line has moved a little bit. It was hovering around 3. It's now about 2.5 in some spots. The Bills are favored 2.5 at home. Total for this one, 53.5. And I'm going out on a limb for this one, V. I'm taking Miami and the points at home and the over at 53.
All
I
right.
know that over at 53.5, 53.5. I got to go even higher. That there's no push value here. I know 54 points sounds like sounds like a ton, but these two offenses are as good as they've been in a long time. The Bills have scored 38 in the last 2. Everybody saw what the Dolphins did last week. Even if you throw out that 70-point performance, these teams still average a combined almost 7 more points than this total. Neither of these defenses are playing terribly well either. The Bills allow, I think, the most yards per carry in the league. And the Dolphins, as good as they have been, they really aren't like an opportunistic defense. They don't turn the ball over a ton. They don't really get a ton of stops. They're really an offensive motivated team, and they're going to beat you that way. This is going to be a boat race. These teams are going to go crazy. Oh, and then not to add, more fuel to the fire, but Jordan Poyer, I think it was Jordan Poyer, right? Not
Yeah,
going to be in this one. He's going to be out for this one. Damar Hamlin, as great of a story as Damar coming back to the NFL has been, and as much as we're all rooting for him, that's not a great matchup for him. When you're a younger player, coming off a pretty serious health issue, haven't played a ton of football on the defensive side, haven't started games, and now you're going to contend with stopping the two fastest wide receivers in the NFL in Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. I just don't see that happening. I see an over here. When this game ends up being like 70 points together, we're going to be like, we should have known.
yeah.
54 is high, but I mean, what were we thinking? And then we talk about this a lot too. When you see games that are going to be fairly close, whether it's big defensive battle like the last game we just talked about, or it's one of these shootouts, taking points is a very, very good move. Doesn't matter who wins in the end, because what matters is you have a 3-point cushion and they're fighting for the victory. They're
Right.
not fighting for you to cover the spread. They're fighting for the victory. So you getting 3 is a very, very good value. And you know what? If you're on the other side too, say you're like, Mason, you're an idiot. The Dolphins are losing to the Bills. The Bills are coming back big this week at home. They're great at home. If that's how you feel, you can find them at 2.5 if you shop around,
Yeah.
which is kind of the beauty of having so many books around now. If you really like them, 2.5 is is not necessarily a bad value if that's the way that you lean. I personally don't. And I'm taking the points over there, and I think that this is going to be a close one and a shootout. So, man, I can't wait to see it. V, what do you see with these two teams? I mean, and be nice because, like, I had to deal with this last week. You know, the city was in shambles. So, but what do you see with this type of matchup?
Man, I've been struggling with this one all week. I don't really know what to make of it. I think this is just going to be one I'm going to sit back and enjoy and not have anything on either side. So there's no stress on this one. This one could really go either way for me. Both teams are playing extremely well on offense the last couple of weeks. They can get whatever they want. If you told me that they scored on every single offensive possession in this game, both teams, that would not shock me in the least. I think that's how good both teams are playing on offense right now. The question becomes, what can they do defensively to stop the opposing offense? Both teams have playmakers who are playing well, but do they have enough firepower to slow each other down? That's going to be the question to watch in this one. I'm not entirely sure, but it's going to be fantastic to watch. It's going to be great to watch it in the fourth quarter to see what these two quarterbacks can do in the clutch. It's going to be fascinating to watch. Both coaches are great. Mike McDaniels is just the wizard right now, calling plays and scheming up offenses. Yeah, I really can't pick one side or the other. I think this is going to be a super fun one to watch.
Mike, man, he's so fun too. He's honestly just the coolest coach. Like
For
the
sure.
I don't know why I laughed so hard about him racing the camera. Like, was that like week 1 or 2? I can't
That's week
remember,
two,
but
yeah.
him just taking off and racing the camera. I'm like, Belichick would never. Belichick could never. No, shout out to Bill. But I agree. Mike McDaniel, such a good coach. You could tell, you know, man, that line last week from, Tua, or was it Mike or was it Tua, where he says, it might look like we came out to embarrass them, but we're not out here to embarrass people. That's almost like insult to
That's
injury.
worse.
Like that's almost being like, yeah, we could have broken the record, but we threw you a bone. So it's like, man, and that's how good they are, is that
Yep,
even when they're humble, it sounds cocky. So, and I love that type of stuff. The Dolphins are honestly like going to be the best team, in my opinion, one of the best teams to watch week in and week out for the rest of the season. They're going to be
for
one
sure.
of the most exciting. Even if they don't perform, we're going to be talking about it. What happened to the Dolphins? They're going to be in the news quite a bit this year, and I can't wait to see it happen, actually. Which
Agreed.
I hope nobody from Denver is watching, because they're gonna be angry at me. The next game we have on the slate, honestly, is kind of a weird one. We have
Yeah,
Cincinnati on the road as favorites, 2.5 point favorites on the road at Tennessee. This one's a little bit loose for me. We actually both took this game, and we're on the under on the game total here at 41. And I think that it really comes down to both offenses being very mild, I think is a nice way of putting it. Even in Cincinnati's like best performance offensively, it was a slog last week. And I don't know. I have a hard time trusting them, especially considering that they haven't reached expectations and they're 0-3 against the spread. And now they're laying points on the road. It's a confusing line for me. I don't know what you quite make of it. Tennessee, on the other hand, isn't world beaters either. These teams actually have really similar outcomes to their season so far. Both lost some close games or played in some really close games late. I know they also both lost to Cleveland. I think they both scored 3 against Cleveland, like
Yeah.
exactly 3 against Cleveland in Cleveland. So I'm not sure what to make of them, but the only thing that I do know is I can't trust either of these offenses. So I'm leaning on the under at 41. I think the under could be even, creep lower to the 40 by the time that kickoff comes, and I'm still probably comfortable taking it there. V, what do you see with this one? Please help me make sense of it because I'm not really sure.
Well, the only thing I know for sure is that Tennessee's offense stinks with the capital S, man. They are tough, tough, tough to watch. They have 2 games this year already where they failed to score a single touchdown, either offensive, defensive, or special teams. They can't do much of anything at all. Derrick Henry has not played well. He's not finding any room to run. Ryan Tannehill is terrible. He's really not a good quarterback anymore. They're going to have to make a move at some point if this continues. I'm sure DeAndre Hopkins is regretting his choice to go there, even if the money was good. I mean, they're just not doing anything at all offensively. Now they have to go up against a Cincinnati defense that has done well so far against bad offenses. They allowed 23 to Cleveland in week 1, and they gave up just 16 last week to the Rams. So this is a defense that is good enough to slow down these terrible, terrible offenses. And then on the flip side, Joe Burrow and that Cincinnati offense are really they're slow start to the season for sure. They're underperforming through 3 weeks. They've only scored 3 total touchdowns on offense in 3 games. Burrow's calf injury seems like it's going to be something that's going to be bothering him long term. It's not something that seems like it's going to go away anytime soon. So the mobility is limited. There's only so much they can do when Joe Burrow is not 100%. And Tennessee has the guys on defense who I think can take advantage of his lack of mobility. You have Jeffrey Simmons up the middle, who's just a terror. I think he's going to be able to have a nice game and get some pressure. I think it's just going to be very, very tough for either team to score. Tennessee has a couple injuries on offense with Treylon Burks expected to miss this game and their rookie Peter Skoronski out on that offensive line. So that's even fewer weapons for Tannehill to get the ball to. I don't see how either team is going to score much at all in this game. So easy under for me.
And you brought it up, Jeffrey Simmons. One of the matchups that I highlighted this week was Jeffrey Simmons against Cordell Volson. Cordell Volson. I don't know if Cordell Volson might not be a household name to a lot of people. He's a left guard for the Cincinnati Bengals, and he got beat like a drum last week against Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald got anything he wanted against him. There was a snap where the poor center doesn't even get a shot to check for pressure from the other side before Volson lets Donald just absolutely blow past him. He's there to try to get the help, and Donald's just splitting a double team in half of a second after the snap. It's one of the fastest pass rush wins I've ever seen in my entire life against 2 grown men. Cordell Volson, unfortunately, is having a really, really tough go of this season so far. And pair that. So Cordell Volson, it goes without saying he had a very, very bad grade, but it was as bad as I've seen it. It's 0.0 pass blocking grade last week. That brings his season grade down to just, let's see, 5.2. I don't know that I've ever seen that. And now, man, I get it. You just played against one of the best pass rushers to ever touch grass. But this week doesn't exactly get a whole lot easier with Jeffrey Simmons. They're going to have to figure something out because Joe Burrow with a calf injury, and I hate this because we want to see Joe Burrow play Joe Burrow football. I hate sitting here thinking that we're on a ticking time bomb for Joe Burrow to have his, season ender. Like, I just hate thinking that. I would much prefer them to be like, hey, Joe, we're going to shut you down. Even if it's a month, even if it's 6 weeks, like, we're going to shut you down, Joe, because your health moving forward means so much more to us as a team than, now granted, I get that the start of the season is very bad for them. And if they're to sit Joe Burrow for the next 6 games or whatever, it could be the end of the season for them. But I think that you're either counting, hey, okay, I have the long-term health of my quarterback in mind, or I'm trying to go 4-2 over the first 6 games of this season and then try to figure it out after he goes down or something. You know what I
Right.
mean? Because it's just a tough break. I'm no doctor or anything, and I doubt all the people on Twitter that are saying that they're a doctor that are also suggesting, that he sit are exactly what they say they are, but it's alarming to watch him be uneasy playing. You can tell he's a little uneasy in the pocket. You can tell it's a little tender. They're having to give it treatment while he's on the sideline with that calf sleeve
Yeah.
device thing or whatever. Like, I, I would be alarmed. I'm not going to be kind of tailing them for a while until we kind of figure out what's going on there. So I'm right there with you. It's hard to lean towards Tennessee, but I think it's easy to take the under as we both are on this one. And
For
that
sure.
was entirely too long for a breakdown of Cincinnati, Tennessee. I'm sorry, but I think we were all coming to the conclusion of what's supposed to happen in this game because it's an enigma. I think it's an enigma. But we get on to another game here. And Chuck LeMaine, I'm so sorry. I swear I wasn't ignoring you. Chuck had a question in here. How nervous are we about Browns pass catchers? I wanted to save this for when we got to Browns Baltimore, which is a game that I'm actually on solo here. Cleveland is -1 at home. The game total for this one, 39.5. I'm on the under here, and it's really not super complicated why. But I think we'll also take a second to break down if we are nervous for these Browns pass catchers. Frankly, I'm a little more, what's the word for it? I think that the Browns pass catchers are more promising this week than I was seeing them in any of the weeks prior, in my opinion. Watson's been playing better than he has. And granted, now the running game is kind of a hodgepodge of stuff where it's very necessary for him to be able to play better, or they're not going to be winning a ton of games because as good as that defense is, they still got to, put up some points. But for me, it's going to be pretty easy to take an under on most of the Browns games going forward because this defense is one of the most impressive units in the NFL this week. Whoops. Oh, there we go. Yeah, I accidentally knocked that off. I hit my keyboard. Is one of the most impressive groups this week is the Cleveland defense, or this year is the Cleveland defense. Myles Garrett is on a mission to win Defensive Player of the Year and carry this team as far as he can take it. If Deshaun Watson can at least play above replacement level football, I think that they'll end up being good. For me, another big, drawback here is the Ravens are going to be without Rashad Bateman and Odell Beckham. That's a tough draw for them. They continue to have injuries. Lamar is actually playing decently well. He's throwing the ball well. He's kind of driving the ball down the field, but they don't have a lot outside of him in one other target. Like, they don't have a ton. So I'm leaning on the under here. I'm probably going to take a lot of Cleveland unders for the rest of the season. What do you see with this game, V? And in specifically in terms of Chuck's comment too, with the Browns pass catchers.
Yeah, I think he's bringing it up because Deshaun Watson was a surprise add to the injury report today with a shoulder injury.
Oh,
Yes, he threw one
oh,
pass in practice today and then had to sit out the rest of practice. So
oh!
there
I
is
didn't see that.
there is some concern that Dorian Thompson Robinson could be in line to start this week. I wouldn't
Oh,
say it's likely. I believe Deshaun Watson did say that he's expecting to play, but it is definitely something to monitor heading into the game. Obviously, if he's not going to play, then we're very concerned about those pass catchers. I think DTR did some nice things in the preseason, but he's a rookie, so there's only so much you can expect from him. So if Watson is out, I would find some other players to play in your lineup rather than Amari Cooper or Elijah Moore or Donovan Peoples-Jones. I think
oh,
there's just going to be better options. So something to watch out for. Thankfully, it's a 1 o'clock game, so you should have maneuverability to
right.
put in some other guys if Watson does end up coming out. But I definitely agree with you, Mason. Regardless of if he plays or not, this is definitely an under for me. Miles Garrett has been just a beast. I mean,
So
that
good.
stuff last week where he single-handedly caused a delay of game just by switching sides. I mean, who does that? I mean, this is just incredible stuff.
I've never seen that in my life. That will live in
Yes.
my mind forever of Tennessee following him with 2 tight ends and getting a delay of game.
I can't wait to see Micah Parsons do that this week because just like he copied that crossover move in week one, I'm sure Micah Parsons is going to copy that at some point this year too. So that's going to be fun to watch. It's just, yeah, Cleveland's defense, they're on another level. And like you said, too many injuries right now for Baltimore on offense. It's going to be Zay Flowers and Mark Andrews pretty much alone this week. So it's going to be tough sledding. And then yeah, we'll see what Baltimore's defense can do against Cleveland's offense. I think. I don't know.
Mm,
Watson had a nice game last week. I just don't know how much we can trust it going forward. It seems like
yeah.
it's very sporadic. You never know when it's going to be good, when it's going to be bad. It's tough to count on right now.
Well, in a shoulder, I think, and that's a news to me because I actually hadn't heard that he had hurt his shoulder. So that's good.
Mhm.
That's probably something that I would have figured out, you know, maybe a little bit too late if I hadn't
Yeah.
done the show tonight. But yeah, if that's the case, then I would probably lean away because, like we said, like I said prior, they weren't impressive to me. They were not a promising group for me moving into last week, and then they kind of changed my mind with,
Hmm.
they played decently well, but shoulders are so hard, especially with throwing shoulders. Like,
Yeah.
there's just so many things that need to happen in a quarterback's mechanics for things to go right, that if you're throwing off a vital hinge to the shoulder, it's just gonna spell really badly for them. Even if they just like, "Hey, we just wanna run the ball a lot," I don't see that being a great move for them as an offense because they need some sort of production because the defense is only so good. The defense is gonna keep them to 3, but sometimes you question if they can get 7. So,
Right. For sure.
yeah. All right. The next game on our list, the first one in the late window here. That was the end of the early slate. The late window first game that we've got on the book here is Vegas heading into LA to take on the Chargers. The Chargers are -5 at home. Game total for this one right now as it sits about 48 and a half or even 49 and a half,
Ooh, wow.
which has moved from when you got it here at 47 and a half. So further reinforcing that you're in the right mindset here. So V, you're on the side of over 47 and a half. What are you seeing with this matchup specifically?
Let's start with Justin Herbert and that Chargers offense. I mean, they have been very, very, very good so far this season. They are averaging just under 29 points per game through 3 weeks. Justin Herbert has over 900 passing yards, 7 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions. He's been awesome. If they could have won a couple of those close games to start the year, Herbert, I think, would definitely be right up there with Tua as favorites to be the MVP so far this season because he's been lights out. Any struggles that the Chargers are having has nothing to do with him or that offense. They've been spectacular, and I think it's going to continue. It's unfortunate Mike Williams went down last week with a season ender, but I think that's part of the reason why you spend a high first round pick on a guy like Quentin Johnston. So you have that backup, and you can develop this guy into becoming a legit star at that position. So it'll be interesting to see what he does. But either way, they're going up against a Raiders defense that has just not been very good. They've allowed 61 combined points in their last 2 games. They have just 5 sacks on this season, and apparently they have 0 takeaways. I was looking at Pro Football Reference. They had just a blank space under the takeaway column for the Raiders, and I wasn't sure if that was just they were so shocked that they had 0 that they couldn't even fill in the number. But it seems to be right. They have no takeaways on that defense. So I think it's going to be another banner day for this Chargers offense. And then on the flip side, Jimmy G is in the concussion protocol. He's been limited all week, so we could be seeing Brian Hoyer starting in this one, but I don't think it's going to be necessarily that big of a drop off in terms of points scored for the Raiders. This Chargers defense has allowed 29 points per game and over 450 yards of total offense per game. They're not doing anything right on that side of the ball, which is just continues to be confounding because you have Brandon Staley as your head coach, who has done a tremendous job as a defensive coordinator earlier in his career. So it's baffling to see given how much talent they have on that side of the ball, but they can't stop anybody. So neither team plays defense. Chargers have a great offense. I think this should be an easy over for me.
See, my only hesitation here, and I agree because it's crazy because this Chargers team is always so good on paper. They always take my money because more years than not, they're my pick to take the AFC West.
Yeah.
And then they do the Chargers things, and like we talked about with the Vikings in the Vikings game last week, like they just sometimes try to give it away to the other team. And as bad as the Raiders have been, like this might be a get right moment for them because defensively, the Chargers just haven't been able to do it on the ground for 2 years, seems like.
Hmm.
They're again not terribly great stopping the run. They're ranked 29th in run defense grade. They're dead last in PFF's negatively graded run play percentage. So a percentage that accounts for how many negative grades you get per play. They have a
Hmm.
negative grade on 74% of their over 74% of their run snaps.
That's
So
rough.
they have somebody getting beaten or somebody over pursuing or somebody giving up a gap or something on 74% of their plays. When you run up against a guy like Josh Jacobs, like as slow as a start as Josh Jacobs has gotten this season, that's a guy with vision and contact balance and one of the best backs in the league. Even if we don't want to talk about it, he is one of the best running backs in the league. And this might be a get right game for him. If they're
Yeah.
able to control the pace, especially after how Devontae Adams played last week, if they're able to keep that pace and kind of get those guys involved early, this game could be closer than it looks on
Yeah.
paper. But that is also an if. There's one universe where something like that happens, and then there's another universe, like you said, where Herbert does Herbert things, throws, these absolute dimes, these darts, these lasers. Um, and you know what? I think you bring up a great point. One of my biggest concerns is actually the Quentin Johnston thing. I don't know if he kind of I wasn't super high on Johnston coming out,
Okay.
frankly. But if this is the team, this is the system that fits him perfectly. Where if he can't step into this role, the Mike Williams role, then that could be alarm bells. Or he could step in and be phenomenal because it's kind of the perfect fit for his skill set.
Hmm.
So that's going to be one that I'm right there with you. I'm watching this week to see how they can figure that out. Um, I think this is actually going to end up being a better game than a lot give it credit for. The AFC West teams end up really going to bat. And really, they play each other close. It seems like Denver, even though they're the bottom feeders of the AFC West, the Raiders, not really all that great either.
If the Chiefs aren't involved, the game's probably going to be close in the AFC West. Let's put it
Exactly.
that way.
Thank you. That's a great way to put it. That is a great way to put it. If the Chiefs are not involved, the game's probably going to be close in the AFC West.
Yeah.
So the next game we have on the slate, we have New England heading into Dallas. Dallas is 6.5-point favorites here after losing to Arizona outright last week. That's a lot of points in my
Yeah.
mind, but okay. 43.5 is the total here. You're on the side of the game total. What are you taking for this one? Over or under at the 43.5?
I'm going to be taking the under on this game. I think this is going to be a low scoring game. I think this could be a relatively close game. I was eyeing New England to cover in this game all week. I was hoping for that number to go from 6.5 to 7 or maybe even 7.5, but it didn't really make that movement. So I kind of stayed away and found some other matchups I liked. But if I had to pick the spread, I would definitely take New England at the points. It just feels like a lot. But I definitely really like the under in this one. Dallas allowed 10 total points in their first 2 weeks this season. And then kind of out of nowhere, they got hit for 28 against a super strange Arizona team that we're going to talk about in a little bit. But I think overall, this is still a fantastic Dallas defense. Micah Parsons, Stephon Gilmore. Terrible news with Trayvon Diggs last week, but I still think there's so much talent on this side of the ball that they're going to be continuing to shut some of the more average offenses down in the league. So love Dallas's defense, and then I think New England continues to play solid defense. I mean, they gave up 25 in the week one against Philly, and then 24 against Miami. But given what Miami has done the week after, 24, it seems like an incredible feat for that New England defense. I think they're playing a lot better than anybody is giving them credit for. Christian Gonzalez has been a wonder so far. He's had to match up against guys like A.J. Brown, Tyreek Hill, and Garrett Wilson, and he has more than held his own. So I think he could have another solid outing in this one, whether he faces CeeDee Lamb or Michael Gallup, depending on where they move him. So I think both defenses are going to come to play. Big thing for me though is that both offenses have a ton of injuries on their offensive lines. Cole Strange and City Sow are limited for New England, and for Dallas, Tyron Smith has already been ruled out, and then Zach Martin is questionable. Plus one other starter on their line is questionable for this one. So if you're going to be missing a ton of guys on that offense, and you have to go up against Micah Parsons or Matthew Judon, I just don't see either offense having very much luck in this one. So definitely got to take the under on 43.
And I'm right there with you. And the Pats have just been in these games late too,
Mm-hmm.
against quality opponents, where it's like they don't go away, they don't quit, and that's kind of a byproduct of a really, really well coached teams. It's something we see out of the Pittsburgh Steelers more often than not as well, and another reason why we often side on that. I'm right there too. The question for me is, what do we make of what happened with the Cowboys last week? I know we're going to get into it in a second with Arizona, but man, they caught them
It just
sleeping.
blew on my survivor pools, man. It was brutal.
Oh my God, absolutely erupted so many survivor pools. That was definitely a doozy for a bunch of people. And another thing that you bring up with the injuries specifically the Cowboys offensive line, I think even Marcus Mosher, he had said that they haven't started all 5 starters on their offensive line in like 2 years, like 20
Wow.
something plus games, always an injury.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, as promising as this offensive line is supposed to be, they're never there. And you know what? We do have to talk about, the defense. Wow. Micah Parsons, man, he is a treat to watch. They're going to have quite a matchup this week. Because, like you said, the New England offensive line has some injuries, but there are also some really solid players along that line. The Cowboys are this team that runs a lot of stunts, gets Michael Parsons movement, gives him some off angles to take guys out, and he excels. I think it's going to be interesting to watch him this week. When we say under 44 now, which it's moved to, I'm still taking it. I don't know why it would move up from
Yeah, that's
43 and a
interesting.
half. But I think that we both agree at under on that number is a really good value, obviously.
For sure.
The next game we have on the list is the one that we were just talking about, and actually is our first real organic head-to-head of the week where we genuinely fall on different sides. So we have Arizona heading into San Francisco. San Francisco is 2 touchdown favorites. That's one of the biggest spreads you're going to see for anybody all season. 2 touchdown favorites at home, 43.5 points. We are on opposite sides of this game total. You got it at over 44. I got it at under 43.5, which is funny because we could probably split the difference somewhere and
Yeah.
figure it out because we're over on the wrong sides. But so we fall on the different sides. So I'll start off by just saying I do not trust that the Arizona Cardinals are as good a team as they've looked. I think everybody's kind of slept on them, including their opponents up to this point. And now, after what they did to the Dallas Cowboys, I don't think anybody's going to be sleeping. They're obviously better than anybody had anticipated, and I love that. I love teams that say, you think we're going to be horrible? Watch this, because they're usually fairly good against the spread. And they're a great value every week, and I'll love to watch that. This isn't one of those weeks, though. The San Francisco 49ers are not only the best team in the NFC right now, they might be the best team in the NFL. They play outstanding offensive football. Everything is in rhythm. Purdy gets everything out on time, rarely makes mistakes, runs Kyle Shanahan's system to a T, and all of the playmakers eat because of it. I mean, you could cash a Christian McCaffrey anytime touchdown every week. You could take one every single week from the start of the season to the end of the season, and you're probably going to have huge unit payouts by the time this thing is all done, because he is just a walking touchdown, a walking playmaker. Now, I know that doesn't exactly put me in good graces for under 43.5, but this will. We'll bring it all back together. The defensive line of this team is just too good. They have 5 of the top 30 pass rushers in win rate this season, and it's not just defensive player of the year Nick Bosa. So every guy is out there eating, and frankly, they've got some questions along the offensive line. Paris Johnson, who played okay last week against Micah Parsons, but now he's not going to get that extra help, the extra tight end, the extra back attention to help him chip, move, catch these stunts. This week, it's got to be solo, and you're going up against the best. Nick Bosa, I think, is going to absolutely eat. We've talked about this before, and it happens more often than not, even though this came back to bite us last week when the Chiefs ended up covering the total against the Bears by themselves. And I always say it takes 2 to tango. It takes 2 to tango. And they did it by themselves in like the third quarter. So as much as that makes me look dumb, more often than not, teams can't just cover it by themselves. And granted, the Niners are a really talented team and they're not going to sleep on the Cardinals. I just don't see the Cardinals being able to contribute a ton of points to this total, if any, frankly. So that's why I stand on the side of the under. Where are you going with this over here? And I think I'm not totally against it. I just have a really hard time with the Cardinals. But so what do you see with the over here on this one?
Yeah, I'll be honest, this was not my favorite pick of the week. If I had to rank all my picks in terms of confidence, this would probably be near the bottom. I was kind of scrounging to find a last total that I liked and found this one. I think there's probably just enough on both sides of the ball to be able to slightly go past this total. San Fran has scored exactly 30 points in each of their first 3 games. I think there's probably very little doubt that they'll do that again this week, if not go even higher than that. So the real question, like you said, comes down to what can Arizona do? They have been surprisingly good on that side of the ball and surprisingly competent, maybe is a better word to use. They've scored 28 points exactly in each of their last 2 games. And doing it against the Cowboys last week was definitely very impressive and very surprising. I think they're doing some nice things on that offensive coaching staff, just kind of coming up with a scheme that allows Josh Dobbs to not have to just sit there, take hits, have to read defenses all day from the pocket. They're letting him move. They're letting him do some QB runs. It looks like a fluid, competent offense. He has 2 passing touchdowns, 0 interceptions, so he's doing a good job of taking care of the ball. So I think there is just enough on that side of the ball where you could see them getting to, 14 or 16 points maybe in this one and just slightly hitting the over. But if you don't trust Arizona to continue being competent, then there's always the possibility that they just kind of completely implode and turn the ball over a ton, and then you get a couple defensive touchdowns, which is also going to help you hit the over. So I think either way you look at it, the only way you're going to hit the under on this one, I think, is if Arizona's offense is terrible and they're just punting it all the time. But if they're terrible and turning it over, you're probably going to see an over on this one.
You
So
can
I
see
think
more.
it could work in 2 ways for me in this one.
We're arguing the same thing. It's
Yeah,
semantics at the end of the
I
day, with
think
just
so.
different
I think
results,
so.
I think,
Yeah.
frankly. So yeah. And another one that I'm interested to see is that how good James Conner's been,
Yeah.
especially from a fantasy sense. He's getting the volume to be a top 5 back in fantasy this year. He comes up against another buzzsaw it's going to be interesting to see if he can get something going, because I think that his contribution to this offense over the last 2 seasons has
Mm-hmm.
been invaluable. And I
For
think a
sure.
lot of people counted him out, especially me. I've never been like a James Conner truther, but man, he continues to prove everybody wrong. Where this team's not supposed to be that good, he's like, "Hey, get on the back. I'll carry us as far as I can." And you love to see that from a guy, because he's a heck of a back. He has great vision and contact balance, which is something in running backs is hard to quantify, because you can't like put vision on a spreadsheet. But when you watch the game and you see guys that find open holes and don't go down easily, that's some of the most valuable things for backs that just don't get talked about enough. And I think that Connor's one of those guys that has that in spades. So that's the matchup I'm most interested to watch this week for sure.
Yeah.
The next game we have on the list heads into Sunday night. It is a game we're both on, and I think for obvious reasons. This is a surprising one, though, V. We actually both took this game at 9.5. It's now at 8.5. I'm not really sure. I disagree wholeheartedly, because, I mean, I hate to continue to beat the dead horse, but Zach Wilson just continues to not play competent football. It's a tough look for them because the defense is actually good, is very good. There's reports that, Robert, I don't know how much weight I put into the reports. I'm not in the locker room. I'm not on the team. I'm not reporting on the team. So I have no idea. But you're hearing reports that he could lose the locker room if they don't try to make a change at quarterback, that some players are reportedly saying he sounds like a Wilson apologist. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I'm not going to get into the mudslinging or anything like that. But the bottom line is that Wilson has just not played up to standard. And it's a tough look, especially when they come up against the Kansas City Chiefs, who look like they are in full stride. Now, full disclosure, I told V that he had to take this game this week because we need the boost in ratings for the show from all the Swifties that are obviously going to come in here, and view our picks, and they're going to be making bets this week. They are. They're already weighing in on the running backs don't matter versus run the ball debate. They're already looking for value. They're parlaying. They're doing teasers, and we love to see it. No, but all jokes aside, the Chiefs are looking as good as they've looked in a long time, at least to start this season. They hit all their stride last week, absolutely blew out the Bears. We talked about the Bears defense being really bad, and I get that the Jets defense is really good. I just think conversely, the Jets offense might be as poor right now as the Bears defense looks in ways. And really, I think I can't remember who said it. I'm trying to think off the top of my head. Somebody on the Chiefs, I think it was maybe Willie Gay. I'm trying to think. Somebody on the Chiefs said, "What do you see when you see the Jets offense?" And they kind of laughed and said, "A team that wants to run the ball." And that's
Mm-hmm.
like the nicest way to put it. A team that knows their only shot right now is to run the ball as good as anybody in the league. And now they have the pieces. Breece Hall is a really solid running back. Garrett Wilson, an amazing wide receiver. We love Garrett Wilson here. Not friend of the show yet, but hopefully one day Garrett Wilson, friend of the show. Uh, it's sad to see that kind of wasted potential and talent, where we thought that this game is in prime time this week because we
Yeah.
thought it was going to be one of the best games in an absolute shootout, but that just doesn't look like the case. And heading towards 7 and not 10, I'm going to go put more money on it. I'm comfortable with it being 9.5. I was surprised it wasn't a full 10, even on the road, and I'm still going for it. V, what do you see with this matchup? I'm I know that we talk about it all the time, but what's happening over there in New York, man?
It's rough, and I mean, for maybe the fourth straight time, we are not able to see Patrick Mahomes versus Aaron Rodgers. I don't know why the football gods don't want us to see it, but somebody is hurt or somebody has COVID, you never get to see this matchup. And once again, we're not going to see it. Unfortunately, we have to be forced to watch Zach Wilson in prime time, and it's just not going to go well. It never does. The most surprising unit, I think, so far this season has been Kansas City's defense. They have allowed 33 total offensive points in 3 games this year. That is incredible. I mean, they don't have a ton of like household names outside of Chris Jones, but they just play incredibly solid defense. And I think it helps that they're playing from ahead a lot, which allows them to create pressure with their front four and just kind of sit back on defense. But it's been very effective. They've allowed an average of 178 passing yards per game. And now they're going up against Zach Wilson, who has averaged 100 or who has thrown for 170 or fewer passing yards in all 3 games this year. He has just 2 passing touchdowns and 4 interceptions. I am all over the under on Zach Wilson's passing yards at 177.5 passing yards. This is my Matthew Berry prop of the week. I expect him to follow me again for the third straight week. And I think this one's going to hit very easily. I just don't see how Zach Wilson's going to go over 177.5. So, got to take Kansas City in the points. Got to take the under on Zach Wilson.
Matt, if you're watching the show, Matt Berry, show some love to my guy V for these picks, man. You're tailing us every week. Maybe just a little bit of a shout out to my man Vishaal here,
Once.
who every single week Matt Berry has tailed Vishaal's player props, and this will be another one I would put money on it. It's right there. And another thing that you put perfectly, the Chiefs defense has been so good.
Yeah.
And part of it has been they have Trent McDuffie in his second year playing outstanding at corner. He is playing lights out, one of the top graded guys, and it helps them because that back end gets so much more secure and it lets these guys work up front. And that's where they're getting pressure and they're doing good things. And like you said, Chris Jones may be the only person but there's guys like Willie Gay, there's guys like Trent McDuffie who are playing solid football that are key reasons to why this unit is so improved over last season or even over the last handful of years. This defense hasn't looked this good in a long time. So
Sure.
I'm right there with you. And I think we're both leaning. I don't know where this one's going to end up finishing. I doubt that it keeps moving towards 7, but I'm definitely going to go put a little bit more on it after we finish here. The last game on the slate, Monday Night Football. We have the Seattle Seahawks. They're heading into New York, and Oddsmakers messed up on this one.
Yeah.
Somebody dropped the ball because this game started at the Giants favored by 1.5. It's now swung all the way in the last, 24-ish hours to Seattle -1 on the road, which is a much more reasonable and understandable line for me. I don't know where you would favor the Giants, even at home. It's an insane thought to think that they were laying points to the Seahawks. The Seahawks have played very well. The only game they really didn't, hold their opponent down was that Rams game. Rams are actually probably better than they're giving credit for, so I'll let it slide. For me, the big difference maker in this one, the Giants secondary is just not getting it done. They don't have anybody playing well in the secondary right now, which is unfortunate because they've spent some picks in that secondary. Deonte Banks has had a tough transition into the NFL, and now he's going to have to stand across from DK Metcalf. Like, welcome to the NFL. That's a tough draw. So I'm firing up all my Seahawks receivers this week and all my fantasy leagues also. I think you can look at all of those props too. They all are going to probably hold a good value. I'm thinking big passing numbers for the Seahawks, and it's just going to be way too much for this Giants defense to contain and for the Giants offense to keep pace with. They just don't really have a lot going for them right now. I don't know. I don't know where else you get it. But B, what are you seeing with this one?
Yeah, this is definitely an insane line when you first saw it. Like, this was free money. It continues to honestly be free money even at Seattle -1 because essentially you just got to treat this like a pick 'em. And I don't know how anybody can take the Giants right now. I mean, these are two teams going in totally opposite directions. After a tough week one, Seattle has bounced back very nicely, scored exactly 37 points in each of their last two games. Gino looks like the guy we saw last year, totally confident, throwing the ball all over the place. Could very well be in the MVP conversation as we get later into the season if they continue to win games and he continues to play well. And you said it. I mean, the Giants' defense just not good. I mean, you singled out the secondary, but I think just overall they have not been good. They've allowed the third most points in the league so far, and they've also given up the fifth most rushing yards in the league. I mean, Christian McCaffrey ran all over them last week. I think this could be a big Kenneth Walker game this week. So now, if you have Kenneth Walker going and you have the passing game going, I just don't see how the Giants are going to do much of anything to slow them down. The Giants' offense could also struggle this week. Andrew Thomas is expected to miss this one. That would be, I think, a second or third straight missed game. Saquon might be back for this one, but I think he's still questionable. So it'll be interesting to see how that one plays out. But I mean, even if he plays, I mean, there's just nowhere for him to run. He's not getting very much room. Not a lot of big lanes. I think this is just not going to be. I don't think a very close game. I think Seattle is the significantly better team in this one. And both teams are traveling back from the West Coast because the Giants did play in San Fran last week.
Yeah. So, and traditionally the Seahawks actually travel better east. There aren't, so a lot of times when you do that Eastern travel and these West Coast teams lose that hour, it's harder on the body than like moving backwards.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there's a study for that or anything like that. Just in your own kind of, I don't know, perception, maybe even confirmation bias. It just seems like teams don't really travel quite as poorly to the East Coast. And the Seahawks tend to do it a little bit better. So, or opposite.
Right.
We actually had a good one here. Brandon is liking Josh Palmer over 3.5 receptions all day. V, what's your take on Josh Palmer's
Well, I
output this
appreciate
week?
that former New York Giants running back Brandon Jacobs is watching the show. Good to see you, man. Good, glad you're here. I think you're right on. We kind of talked a lot more about Quentin Johnson filling in for Mike Williams, but I definitely could see Josh Palmer's targets going up in his absence as well. So that makes a ton of sense. Nobody really of note in that Las Vegas secondary outside of Marcus Peters. So I definitely like that play as well.
Yes, Brandon Jacobs, friend of the show. Yeah. So obviously, I'm right there too. I agree with you. I think the things that we've talked about. That receiving core has these pieces. They can put it together, and this is going to be kind of one of those games that we got to figure it out. That they got to maybe not give the game away, and maybe that's more of questionable coaching and decision making. And it seems like they just get in their way more often than not. And
Yeah.
it's tough. It's tough for that. But 4 receptions at the end of the day is not that much, especially for how much the dude, contributed last year with
And
all
just the
the
number of dropbacks you're going to see out of Justin
yeah,
Herbert, especially with Austin Eckler still not going to play this
so
week.
many.
Yeah,
So many dropbacks.
all of them.
Shout out to Austin Eckler. Get that whole bag, Austin. We are rooting for you, buddy. Get the entire bag. Sit out the whole season if you need. No, I'm just kidding. That's the Broncos fan in me. So that does it for the week. That is the week 4 breakdown. It was a lot of fun, V. We're back same time next week, 8 p.m. Eastern time, so nobody miss it. Check us out, importantnonsense.com. That's where you can check out all the team's work, betting, fantasy, DFS, guillotine, all that stuff. You can become a member at importantnonsense.com in the captain tier. That's the $3 tier. I had to double check it because I've always forgotten how much. That's the $3 tier. That's how you get into our Discord. And that is how you can get into our sports betting channel, ask us all the questions you need, ask all of the fantasy guys all the questions you could ever desire, your start sits, your waivers, everything. And especially this week, we're putting even more of our favorite picks into the Discord on a weekly basis. And anybody that knows this show knows we don't hit every game every single week, even though we started to hit quite a few of them and most of them every week. But if there's a game or a bet or something specifically that you have a question on, hit us up in the Discord. We're happy to answer it. We're making a ton of money there. V is an absolute killer. V is one of the best handicappers in the business, continues to be 4 years running. Another great season this year, 65% plus win rate. over 11% return on investment. We are documented handicapping through Betting Pros. So you can check out our numbers there if you're really that interested. We're also posting them in the Discord, so check that out. And you can get any of our merch too at importantnonsense.com. Promo code LOCK. So if you want anything, go check it out. And yeah, so that about does it. V, do you have any parting words for the people at home?
Well, I appreciate the kind words. Always very nice of you to say. Looking forward to continuing the nice start to the season throughout the rest of the year. Yeah, should be a good weekend. We have a couple of really good games with Buffalo and Miami. And then we have a couple of games that might not be so interesting for everybody else. But for me, if the Bears and the Panthers lose, Chicago's in the driver's seat to have the first 2 picks in the draft next year. So that's all that matters for me. I'm looking forward to it. That might be a nice little parlay that throw out there. Broncos money line, Vikings money line. That's the Chicago parlay of the week.
That is the Chicago mock draft parlay of the week per V. I love it. I'm right there with you. That was a good one. We're gonna have to put that one in the Discord too. So everybody check out the Discord for that one. And until next time, good night, good luck.